are running this live on Facebook, so we have that happening, and that's good. Let me give my name, before I introduce Nicole, my name is Sarah Urquhart. I'm with Shift Summit, and we have been really happy to offer these classes during this Corona crisis. We're trying to figure out what to do for July, so hang tight, watch closely. We will be sending out a newsletter that gives some details once we have that decision made, so that should be happening soon. But we really do appreciate everybody who has been participating and who has been joining our classes. I'm excited for this class. I really love all of Nicole's, everything that she offers. And let me introduce Nicole Emma. She is an intimacy coach, a sex educator, a relationship anarchist, and a sexual freedom advocate. She believes that inspiration, passion, and creativity all come from sexual energy, and a block in that energy shows up later in sex, relationships, and even finances. She also says, most importantly, these blocks limit our ability to feel alive and to feel love. And these are the things that make life worth living. She is the co-founder of SWAP Salt Lake City, a speaker at TEDx Salt Lake City in 2019, and she's the founder of Utah Consent Coalition. And every topic that she comes up with, I just walk away feeling like I've learned a lot. So I'm excited for this, this class, and I'm sure she's going to deliver as she does every time. I see a new name or two here, so if you have questions for her, go ahead and put it in the chat. If you want her to try and see it during the presentation. Sometimes that's difficult, but she will for sure see it by the end, or you can put it in the Q&A. And if for any reason you want to be anonymous with your questions, do that in the Q&A, and you do have the option to hit anonymous. So, okay, with that said, I think I'll turn this over to Nicole, and let's get started on the class. It's all yours.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm always speechless after this wonderful introduction. I just love it. And I love working with Sarah and Shift Summit. This has been awesome. So hopefully we get to do more of these. And thanks to everyone for being here. I'm going to shift to sharing my presentation, which takes it away from me being able to see the chat. So that's kind of why Sarah was saying I might be coming back to them and rather than addressing them right in the moment, but we'll get to them. Yeah, so I will share my screen here and go from there. It says it's disabled. Try.
Let's see. Share screen. All panelists. Okay, there you go. Should do it now.
Okay. Ta-da.
That work? There you go. Okay.
Yay. Thank you. Okay, so obviously the topic at hand today, communication in relationships. This is such a loaded topic because, I mean, we could literally spend a whole weekend, you know, or a full week retreat, you know, on this one alone. And it's something that is so big and important in our lives and so encompassing that it's hard to pare it down to an hour. But what my intention here is to kind of do some high-level view of what really is behind some good, healthy communication and a couple tools that you can take with you. And then from there, of course, you're welcome to reach out and let me know if there's more questions or to help apply things to your everyday life. But realistically, why, oh, I lost my mouse. I'm sorry, bear with me one sec. Ta-da. Okay, why are we here? There we go. So why are we here? I'm going to guess that people that are looking for a class about healthy communication may have encountered some struggles in the past and want to avoid that in the future. Whether that's a current conflict or just preparing yourself to have better tools to create something in the future, I'm going to guess that a lot of what drives us to want to learn this skill is realizing we don't have it or wanting more of it. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. Like we're not raised with a lot of these skills and tools, right? We wait until there's a conflict to realize that there's a gap there. Why is my mouse just not advancing? Let's try. Oh, okay. So again, this is a big one. Communication is the #1 factor that's directly attributed to the quality of relationships, right? If I were to ask people, what do you think it takes to build a quality relationships? I bet some people would say communication. Some people would say values that are aligned, having fun together, great sex, having the same money habits, all these different things. But when it comes down to it, if you don't have communication, it's really hard to make everything else work. No matter how much you align on all the other things, if you don't have a way to communicate, it's really hard to make a relationship not only, stay together, to be successful that way, but to have everybody feel happy and satisfied. So it's such a driving force, even outside of relationships, in our interpersonal relationships with our family members, our kids, our parents, our employers, our coworkers, even at the post office, right? The communication skills follow us absolutely everywhere. And it's absurd to me that we don't spend more time teaching this, right? We can teach algebra, which some people may or may not use depending on the path they go, but we do not teach how to have boundaries and how to have healthy communication. And I just think that's silly. So I'm doing what I can to try to teach these skills and hope everyone can make better relationships out of it. Again, my mouse, why? Let's try, okay. That's different than before. Sorry about that. So I like this quote. There's a difference between knowing how to do something and being good at it, right? You might know how to communicate. We all do. We talk every day. Does that mean you're good at communication? You might know how to, I know how to step on a skateboard and ride, I don't know, 10 or 20 feet, right? So I could be like, I know how to skateboard. I am absolutely not good at it. I don't know how to turn. I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to jump. I don't know how to do any of it. There's a big difference. And the transition from just knowing how to do it to getting good at it is practice. And that takes exercise just like any other muscle. One of the fundamental tenets of communication that I want to set right up front. Communication in a healthy and fulfilling relationship cannot be quid pro quo. I think this one thing right here is probably the biggest shift that anybody can make in their relationships, especially in times of conflict, is that we often think of relationships as being, I'll do this if you do that. Well, why should I be nice? You weren't nice to me, right? Why should I go out of my way when you won't do this for me? Well, I'm the one that always does this and this. So it's your turn to step up and do this and this, right? And it's okay to have those frustrations, and it's important to discuss them if they're there. But if you're waiting to use your tools and be your best self until they do, we're going to be at a stalemate all the time, and that's going to be a power struggle, right? We have to put the relationship before our pride, our need to be right, our need to be even. So shifting from I'll do this if you do that, we move to I'll do this no matter what, right? And that's a matter of values. So I know one of my core values is honesty, right? And kindness. So what that means is no matter how anybody else is acting, I value kindness and honesty, and I'm going to do my best to live those things because they're my values. So if somebody's not being honest with me, or they're not being kind with me, and I were to say, well, I'm not going to be kind until you are kind, that's a way of shirking the responsibility of my own behaviors, right? So I need to step back and I would need to say, okay, you know, I value kindness, and it's really hard to do right now because this person isn't being kind. How can I shift it? Right? And that might mean taking a step away, or even just addressing that, like, hey, I'm trying really hard to be kind here, and it feels like maybe you're not. Can you maybe try to have a kinder tone too, so that we can both work through this a little bit better? Right? These types of things. Again, it's about your values, and it's about, I'm going to be this way and I'm going to do this no matter what. I'm going to put my best effort here. I'm going to assume the best and give the benefit of the doubt, because that's what I believe in, and because that's important in our relationship. And it's not contingent on what you do, right? And that shifts so much. So if everybody can start there, think about every interaction you have from here forward. Think about it like, am I doing this so that they will do something, or because they will do something, or am I doing this because it's one of my core values, right? And what that says in a relationship is, I give you permission to not be perfect. Somebody might be hurt, they might be upset, they may not have the ability to understand why, or shift to being more kind, and they're just ranting, right? And when you're like, hey, I'm going to be kind anyways, what's going on with you? Are you okay? Let's talk about it, right? Instead of like, well, if you're not going to speak kindly to me, then I won't. That ends up being a battle, right? So if we can maintain that spot, that person is going, wow, I had a moment there. I wasn't using my best tools. Thank you for forgiving me and loving me there. And that's the unconditional love we all want, right? And if we can do that, and we can show that, and we can model that, we're going to get that back as well. And that place right there is probably 75% of communication problems, is just the ability to let people be imperfect. And from there, we can move through all the other things I'm going to talk about. So how do we get there? Da, 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 da. So these are the main three things I've identified to get to a place of healthy communication. There are a lot of different programs, a lot of different books and people and speakers and coaches and therapists and all these things that may have more or less, this isn't the end all be all, but I think there's a general progression. And the first thing that I encourage, and anyone that's been to my classes before knows I always start here, know yourself. I'm going to talk about these more, but knowing yourself is huge. If I don't know what's going on with me, I can't expect someone else to. And I don't know how to ask for what I want or even what I'm getting at. We always need to know ourselves. And then the second one are the guidelines of successful communication. And that's probably, you know, the bulk of the class today. And then conflict to closeness. How do we shift a conflict back to being close? So damage control or something, right? So know thyself. Knowing your beliefs about relationships. I talked about this in a class before. We talked about non-negotiables, manifesting a relationship of your dreams, right? What are the beliefs that you bring into a relationship? Because that's what you're going to attract. That's what you're going to see. If you think that men should have the job and women should stay home, there might be a conflict if one partner were to ask to switch roles, right? Hey, I want to go to work instead of staying home. Or, hey, can I stay home and you go to work? Then there's a conflict, right? So knowing your own beliefs is critical here. What role do you believe you play, even if it's not gender specific? Is it your job to grocery shop? Is it your job to take care of all the responsibilities and the bills and the kids and all the things? And sometimes these are healthy and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're true and sometimes they're not. You may think, well, based on the evidence of what I've seen in this relationship, it appears as though I'm responsible for handling absolutely everything so that this other person can do absolutely nothing. It's important to identify that stuff because you can't address it if you don't know it's there. Are there any roles that need to change? And that may be where that comes in, like, this isn't working for me anymore. Knowing your communication style in general. I'm going to talk in more detail about the languages. Love languages and apology languages. Most people have heard of these, But for anyone that may not have, especially the apology language, that's a little less publicly known, I guess. These are basically communication styles. Each of us have a different style of receiving information and how we interpret it. And if we don't understand our own language, we can't communicate our needs as well. This is how I hear love. This is how I hear I'm sorry. And somebody may be speaking those languages in their style and you won't understand it. So then we end up in these struggles that look like, you don't even appreciate me. I've said sorry 100 times and you won't let it go. Right? So those are critical. And there's been some debate, in the community, if there's more, if there's, some left out or some that can be consolidated or overlaps or whatever. But again, it's a general framework. It doesn't have to be specific, but having an idea of what you need and why gives you a starting point to say, oh, okay, you said I'm sorry, but I actually need a little bit more restitution. And I didn't see that as sorry. That's not how I hear it. And again, we're going to talk about that more. But that's part of knowing yourself. I think I skipped one. Sorry, hang on. I don't know why my mouse is being weird. Nope, it looks like I didn't. Okay, sorry. I need to figure out what that is. Love languages. Okay, so again, these are the ways that we personally like to hear. And if you Google the love languages, the 5 love languages, whatever, there's a whole quiz that you can take that walks you through a couple things like, which of these do you prefer? And based on your score, you may have 2 or sometimes even 3 dominant ones. Usually I say, look at the top 2. My personal ones are physical touch and quality time. And that's important because in my first marriage, my husband doesn't have those same languages. His were words of affirmation, and I'd say probably acts of service or gifts, one of those 2, but totally opposite, right? So I wasn't feeling physically connected or, him spending quality time with me. And so I would say things like, you're never here. You're never even here. Like, do you even care about us? You're never even here. And he's looking for words of affirmation, right? Which are these complimentary, positive words. And I wasn't giving him those, I was giving him negative words. And so we felt more and more distant. And I didn't know it at the time. This was something I learned in retrospect. And I went, oh, I wonder if we would have known that if we could have shifted some big things in our marriage. So just to touch briefly, you've probably read through all these as I've been talking, but words of affirmation, again, are those verbal compliments, things you say explicitly that build them up, show them love and appreciation, confirm your gratitude, these types of things. Wow, that's so awesome that you did that for me. I cannot believe how far you went out of your way. I am so grateful for you. Look at you all lit up when you're doing that thing you love. That's beautiful. I am so proud of you and the person, that you are and the work that you've done. Congratulations, whatever, all these types of words of affirmation. And something to note too is that if when you're doing the opposite of this, something in their language, it takes a lot more points away. So if we were to think about the point thing, right, and I were to give somebody a compliment to be like, I am so grateful. I was just thinking about it today and all that you've done and how much value you provide in my life and how much fun you are. And that just means so much to me, right? That could be like 100 points in their bank. But the opposite, where you're like, you're just a lazy bum. Like, are you ever going to do anything? Like, can you just move somewhere and like find something to do? Because anyways, these types of things can take 100 points away because it's so important to them. This is a part of their core being. Acts of service. The idea here is that you're taking something off their plate. They have a bunch of stuff to do. So maybe you take their car and wash it. Maybe it wasn't even on their list, but it was something that they like and value. And you, by doing that, makes it so that's one less thing that they need to get to. People that have a continuing list of things over and over and over generally tend to value this because they feel like they can't ever clear their list. So taking something off of that for them shows that you understand how they operate and you want to help. Quality time, focused and undivided attention. Quality time generally isn't being on your phone and sitting here in the room and being like, yeah, you know, whatever, unless maybe you're playing a game together or something on your phone. Like, obviously you're interacting together. There's not outside distractions. You are focused on them. Physical touch. This one specifies non-sexual touch. I think that one can go both ways. I think sexual touch can count here if you're a physical touch person, but it can't be only sexual touch. Sometimes people who are physical touch speakers, or, you know, language speakers, if they only engage sexually, still feel unfulfilled because it feels transactional and not connective. Something as simple as sitting next to somebody and watching a movie together and touching can do it. Platonically, I mean, having friends, like sometimes we'll have girlfriends and we'll just pile pillows up on the floor and we all just sit and like cross legs and arms and we play with each other's hair and talk and watch movies and stuff. And that's a good source of physical touch. Me being a physical touch person pretty highly, something like that is like really fulfilling for me because I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all these people and I feel so loved because they're in my space and I trust them and they're safe and they trust me in their space. And that means something to me subconsciously. Some people might be like, oh my gosh, I can't handle touching people, and that's different, right? And then gifts, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, but not just any gift, not like, oh, I saw this thing on sale. Something that's meaningful, that shows that you put thought into it and you understand who they are and what they like. I know that you like, you know, llamas. I was birthday shopping for my son today and he likes llamas. I don't know where llamas came from, but he likes llamas. So I'm like, I got you this cute little pillow that you like, soft, fluffy things, and it's a llama, right? So that's something that means something because I put together that he would like that. Sometimes it's also helpful to know these things because when you're doing gifts for somebody that isn't a gifts person, you can think about the other languages. So if somebody's a physical touch person and not a gift person like me, they may value getting a gift certificate to a massage more than an electronic device. Quality time, buying movie tickets, right? And being like, here, let's go to the movies together, let me know when, means more than flowers, right? The apology languages. So these are a lot less talked about. And I think they're equally important. When something crosses you, what do you need to hear, to see, hear, or experience in order to feel like you can move forward? And I know that I can speak personally to this because in a situation with my marriage, my husband had tried to apologize for something and it was in a different language than my apology language. And it came back to that same thing I mentioned before. I've apologized for this several times. Why won't you let it go? And my language is different. He expresses regret, but I need more accepting responsibility and repenting, kind of a thing. So again, there's a quiz for this one as well. You can Google the 5 apology languages. You can go through and see what yours are. Expressing regret is the verbal expression, I am sorry. And not just like, I'm sorry, and like rolling your eyes, but like an actual genuine indication of regret and remorse. Like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I did not mean to do that. I don't even know how that happened or what got into me. I'm sorry. That genuine thing means so much. And oftentimes it comes tandem with one of the other ones. Accepting responsibility is a big one for me personally because it shows that you know what your part in it is. And that helps me feel like it can change. When somebody doesn't accept responsibility, I wonder if they think it was just a circumstance or a fluke and, you know, oops, sorry, stepped on your foot kind of a thing, versus like, oh, I wasn't walking carefully. And that's a little one. I'm not going to be like, you didn't give me a good enough apology for stepping on my foot. So I was trying to find a better analogy there. But as an example, you know, just somebody that's like, oh, here's what I did. I totally did that. That was my bad. I wasn't careful. Making restitution is making it right. Paying if something's been damaged, repairing something that can be repaired. If something was misspoken, correcting the error. If something was said in harm, again, taking responsibility for the feelings and making right for it. Like, what did this cause you an inconvenience in your time, in your day? What can I do to make it up to you? And I think we're familiar with restitution when it comes to like the legal system, where if you wreck into someone's car and it's your fault, you have to pay to fix their car. Genuinely repenting is a commitment to not make the same mistake again. And they all sound like they're so obvious, and we could probably all be all of them, but some are more important than others. And you may be okay with 2 of these, and you may not be okay with 4 because they didn't hit that one that's a big deal. So these can be a little more subtle to understand than the love languages, but I still think they're equally important, especially when we're talking about conflict and trying to, you know, recover from those things. So a genuine commitment to not make the same mistake again is like, here are the things I'm putting in place so that you can feel comfortable knowing this isn't something that I'm going to just let happen again. And then requesting forgiveness. This is a specific request. Will you forgive me? Or even, what would you need in order to forgive me? Because that opens up the door, like, hey, I don't feel like you took responsibility though, right? And when you ask forgiveness to somebody that values being asked this, it's a power shift. Instead of, I did all these things, we're good, right? Like, you should be over it. It's an acknowledgement of their feelings. I am acknowledging, and I want you to tell me if you felt okay. Do you forgive me? And if not, why? Are there any questions about any of that? I know that was a lot, but I think some of those are kind of known. Okay, and then know thyself again. Know your current needs and emotional state. So again, when we're talking about know thyself, knowing your beliefs and biases, right, was the first one. The second one is knowing your languages, what you need in general. This one is specific to this moment. Right now, what are your current needs and emotional state? That can vary by day, by hour, by minute. I got home from work, my needs and my emotional state are gonna be very different. If I had a stressful day, than if I just got home from a brunch with my girlfriends. So walking in the door to a conversation that's like, hey, we need to talk, is gonna happen very differently because of those needs and emotional state. And if someone says, can we talk, right when I got home from a stressful day at work, I need to know my needs and emotional state enough to say, I need a minute first, or more accurately, a better time frame. Can you give me 30 minutes to check in? I'd like to have a minute to decompress. Or tomorrow, you know, whatever. This is critical for boundaries. To be able to say, I'm sorry, I don't have space to do this right now. Or the opposite, I have something that I want to address with you. It's knowing your personal state. So when your feelings are hurt, why? First of all, knowing that your feelings are hurt and not just this gut reaction of anger, right? Being able to go back and say, okay, why am I mad here? What am I even mad about? Oh, I'm mad because they said that thing that was rude. Like, I can't believe they made a comment to my friends about how, you know, I never work. Like, are you kidding me? I worked my butt off. That was rude. So then in that moment, knowing that what it is you need, like, I just want to mention to you that I thought that was kind of rude, and I'm good. I don't need this big apology or this big thing, or maybe I do, right? Or maybe I don't want to talk about it yet. Knowing your current state is critical. So now, assuming you know yourself, and again, that's a muscle that we all have to exercise and strengthen as well. But as we build that strength, we can move more into these guidelines of successful communication. So I want to point out that they do build on each other. They're not separately operating units, right? So knowing yourself gives us pieces that we need to carry into this next part. The guidelines of successful communication. So this particular section is probably the bulk, again, of this class. And I'm going to talk about these 4 things in a lot more detail. But these are the basic guidelines. Assuming good intent, defining and accepting reality, communicating with the desired outcome in mind, clear, direct, and sensitive communication. With these 4 things in mind, you can turn any conversation around from a fight to a productive plan forward. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect or pretty all the time, but having these things in mind and circling back and going, oh, I forgot to assume good intent. Okay, let's shift that, right? You can chip away at these things and get to a place where you're like, oh my gosh, we could not get through that one issue before, and now we've been able to find a way around it. So let's start with assuming good intent. Assuming good intent is really hard. It sounds easy and it sounds logical, but it is so hard. And I'm going to say that I put it first here because I want you to always start there. When you're actually in the throes of communication, I want you to always come back to good intent. 9 times out of 10, the reason that we get offended or heated or upset or angry is because we forgot to assume that they have good intentions. You're mad, you're mean, you're not treating me well, these things aren't fair, you're doing stuff wrong. If we can step back and say, how can somebody who has the best interest of this relationship at heart, my best interest, his best interest, they want the best possible thing, how could they be acting in a way that looks like they don't? Right? Someone comes in screaming and yelling and ranting, and you're like, you jerk, I can't believe you're talking to me like this. It's going to have a much different effect than if we go, wow, this person is not a jerk, and they seem like one. What is happening? Because your approach then becomes, oh my gosh, are you okay? What happened? What do you need? Which makes them feel safe to be able to move forward and address the issue. Right? If we're worried about how they approach you because of the way that you interpret those feelings, we're not getting to what actually happened. So that's why I start in the beginning with saying, like, putting the best interest first in the relationship, and that idea that I'm going to have my values, even if they don't, right? What's going on inside of them for them to come across this way? And this is the very first thing. And again, it's hard because when we feel attacked and we feel like things aren't fair, or we feel like we're always doing the work, right? We get exhausted and we're like, I'm always giving this person the benefit of the doubt. So here's some tips about assuming good intent. All human behavior is rooted in increasing comfort or decreasing pain. There may be a lot of things in the way. When you're upset or hurt, you don't always have access to the tools. And the way that I like to think of it is you keep your tools in the garage. You have a toolbox, some may be out because you use them more, some may be dirty and hammered, and some need repaired or replaced. But when you're upset and you're flooded and you're triggered and all these things are going on, the lights are off in your garage. The lights are off. You might be in there fishing and you know they're there, but you don't know what to do with it. I don't know why I'm upset. I don't know what's going on. I want to talk differently. I can't. And that alone, just looking for your tools, heightens it even more. It makes you more stressed out because now you know you should be calm and you can't figure out why you're not. And there's this turmoil going, right? So the other person on the other side knowing that the way that we act when we're upset means I don't have access to my tools, but underneath all that, I'm trying to increase comfort or decrease pain. Something is going on, right? People are doing the best they can with the tools they have. The rude comments are not about the receiver. They're about the sender. And again, that's why I was saying the person who's acting harshly has something going on with them. Even if you've done something wrong or hurtful or unhealthy, their behavior is about them. So if I accidentally smash my partner's car with mine on the way in the driveway, I know I've messed up. I know they're probably going to be frustrated, right? That person can come in and be like, "Are you kidding me? I can't believe you did that. You're so dumb," right? Or they can come in and say, "Oh my gosh, what happened? That sucks. Like, I'm so sad about my car. Let's figure out what happened." Those are two very valid approaches to the same issue. And neither one of them were about you. Neither one of them were about how you handled it, how you talked, how you behaved. They were all about that person and the tools that they have available and how much exercise they've done, strengthening their muscles of communication. So when we can remember that, we can detach the need to take it personally. So when they come in yelling and ranting, we're not like, "Gosh, you're being a jerk to me about this." You can be like, "Oh, you're really upset." Right? And that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. And I might feel really bad. But I don't have to take it to mean that their angry tone means I'm not worthy or that I'm an idiot, even if they want to call me that. These steps and these tools make your attitude, your energy more positive and kind. And somebody that comes in a rage, "You freaking idiot, I can't believe you hit my car. What the heck are you thinking, blah, blah," right? And you're calm and you're kind and you're like, "Oh, I know, I messed up there. I can see you're really upset. Ugh, I feel awful. I want to figure this out. I want to make this right. I'm so sorry." And your approach is kind. They're going to go, poof. They're going to calm right down and be like, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I should probably breathe for a second because I'm obviously really upset about this and I don't want to be rude to you." Because you're sitting there being kind, right? And they're going to be like, "Oh, I don't match their energy. I should probably do that." This is a good way to diffuse bombs too. But also, you're going to feel better. You are going to feel better about yourself and these exchanges, no matter which way this goes. You could be dealing with somebody that is a total hothead and always wants to yell and call names and scream, and they may not change. And I'm going to talk about some of those things later too. But knowing that you are a kind and calm person regardless will make you feel okay about it. I did my part. I did what I could. I did anything that was in my control because they're not in your control. And then there's a point which you can look at patterns and things to decide if this is something that needs to shift or something like that. We can talk more about that later. Okay. Oh. Giving all my secrets away. Just kidding. Okay. Since my arrow keys aren't working, I can't go backwards. I have to go back out and all the way back in. So sorry about that. Okay, so the first one, assuming good intent. So let's say I know myself. I wasn't paying attention when I came in the driveway. I was texting. I know I'm not supposed to be doing that. I drove in and I totally crashed into their car. I am stressed and I feel guilty. And then you go into this exchange, like assume good intent, right? They come yelling and screaming at you. They're upset. They have good intentions because they're wanting to understand what happened, resolve an issue. They value having a car that looks and functions well, and they feel like that's something that was damaged or not upheld. So then you go into defining and accepting reality. When I argue with reality, I lose, but only 100% of the time. This one can be tricky to know what's real and what's not. In my example of the car hitting, right? You can sit all day and be like, I wish you hadn't hit my car. I wish you'd never been on the road. I wish you hadn't been driving. I wish you didn't have a phone. I wish you didn't yell at me when you walked in the door. The reality is it happened. And I could sit in that space of wishing it hadn't happened all day, but that doesn't get us to a resolution, and that doesn't get our relationship to closeness. It's okay to have those feelings. And generally that's a grief, even a micro grief in some situations where it's like, I wish I hadn't had that happen to my car, and it did, right? And that's something that can be processed probably separately from the conversation that we're having to resolve the issue, or even with your own support system and not the partner, because they tend to get mixed up. So again, parts of this, identifying the reality, what's happening, what's the likelihood it will continue? Plan for what you can predict, and then eliminate the shoulds and have tos and always and nevers. So shoulds and have tos, I'm saying we eliminate that because they are moral judgments and subjective. We can discuss all day what should have happened or what you should be doing. We may have very different opinions about that. You shouldn't be on your phone while you drive. Well, that may sometimes be true and sometimes may not. There may have been an instance where I should have been on my phone in that moment. Again, those are semantics and we get stuck in them. So we can shift the shoulds to those other words that you heard me use right now, right? Like sometimes it might be a good idea not to be on your phone. Most of the time, almost always. And have to is the same. You have to do this, you have to do that. A lot of times we think, or I have to go to school, or I have to do this thing. We don't. A lot of it's choice. And we take away some accountability here with these words, and we take away clear and direct communication with these words. Always and never are, again, distractions and semantics. You always have your phone. I can easily say, no, I don't always, because yesterday at 4 p.m. I didn't, and today when I took them to this thing I didn't, therefore you're wrong. But that doesn't resolve the issue at hand. The issue was somebody was frustrated about somebody being on their phone and not paying attention to what happened, and that caused this car to get wrecked. There are more productive ways of doing that. I feel like if we were more responsible with our phones and present while we drive, this could have been avoidable. At which point I could say, you're right. I could have avoided that and I didn't, and I can take accountability. Or there may be an extenuating circumstance. Most of the times, yes. This time I was on my phone because there was this emergency, and still I probably could have pulled over or done something different, right? But when we're like, you should have done this, we can argue all day. You shouldn't be on your phone. Well, why? I get to choose when I'm on my phone, or I'm not on my phone, and it ends up being this cycle of things that aren't productive. The reality is it happened. I was on my phone. I was distracted. I crashed your car. How do we want to handle this going forward? So the actual application of defining and accepting reality can be tricky. And that's why I said this one can be tricky, trying to discern what's reality and what's not, right? Because our stories feel very real when they happen. I may have a story that my partner never pays attention when they drive and always is on their phone and doesn't care and doesn't take things seriously. So I can go through this checklist, right? Am I surprised by their behavior? No, because they always do this. Do I have evidence to suggest that it would be different? Well, no, because if I've seen it a lot, then I probably could have expected that they're going to do that. Right? Is there anything that you can do about what happened? No. It's done. If the behavior is characteristic, what would make you think they would act differently? You know, maybe nothing, or maybe they told me they were going to put their phone down. Right? Those are two very different conversations. But if I say nothing would make me think they were going to act differently, then you can start to see that I am being unrealistic in my expectation of reality. This is tricky. So if I think that my partner is always on their phone, is never paying attention, and doesn't take driving seriously, and I don't have examples to think that they would do otherwise, then I ought to set my expectations based on that. I might be disappointed that my car was crashed, but if I can expect that my partner is somebody that doesn't pay very much attention when they drive, then there are other changes that get to happen in between. Like, okay, you crashed my car. So this is something we've talked about before, and wanting to shift these other behaviors, but you're not as blindsided by it because you expect this is how that person is. If my partner is somebody that always yells over everything and wants to use harsh words and put me down, I may not react as surprised, right? Why are you being so rude? Why are you yelling at me? You know, you always yell. It's like, that's how they are. And if you can't accept how they are, if the reality is this is something that's a predictable and expected behavior, then you can have a conversation about shifting it. Hey, this is something that I would like to see change. And we talk about that a little bit when we talk about boundaries. Okay, or you may not engage in or participate in, right? And I talk about the difference there too. But if it's something that you can predict and expect, you have responsibility to shift something yourself, to do something different, to expect something different. And when it's like every time of this, I can't believe you're yelling at me. Why are you yelling at me? Well, I know that that's a person that yells, and I'm like, okay, well, I know that you get really upset quickly, and that's how you respond. Maybe we could take a break and come back and talk about this when you've cooled down, because I know that that's how you are. This one's tricky because we have to really let go of our attachments to all these stories. That's where all the shoulds and all the nevers come in. And if it looks like it's a new behavior, they've never done this before, it's coming completely out of the blue, well, then we go the other direction with it. If it's new, what might explain it? What was different? What happened? That puts us in a place of curiosity and not a place of, you know, a judgment of you should have done this or you shouldn't have done that. Just like, well, what was going on? Let's figure it out. That one's kind of sticky. I know there was a question that popped up a minute ago. Sarah, is that something I should touch on or come back to? Good? Okay. And the last one, communicate with the desired outcome. Sorry, not last one, next one. The desired outcome in mind. What are we working towards here? Complaints don't create change. And that's where I was saying, like, if you're just mad that it happened, you know, I'm mad that my car got smashed up. Okay. You are welcome to be mad that your car got smashed up. You can have those feelings. That doesn't create the change that we need to resolve this issue in our relationship. So that's where we separate those things out. What are we working towards here? What is our goal? And again, that's kind of this overarching idea that I mentioned at the beginning, that we want to work together towards resolution. It's not who's right and who's wrong or who does more of this. Our goal is to resolve this in the way that feels best for everybody. So that shifts our mindset a little bit, our perceptions. Okay, I know you're upset here. We're working towards a place of resolving this for everybody. And the way to get us there to resolve it is to talk kinder. I know you're upset. I did that awful thing that sucks. Can we talk about it? So identifying the outcome, again, you know, working towards a resolution together. What's the outcome that you want? Do you want to get the car fixed? Do you want to change this habit of being distracted while we drive? What would they need to see in order to want that same outcome? Right? Again, we started with our own self-awareness. We know our language. We know the things that we want and need. This place can get us to the empathy. Right? If they're really upset and it's not being productive, and the desired outcome here is to find a resolution, then what do they need to see, hear, and experience in order for them to want that same resolution? If they're really upset and mad at me, and the goal here is to apologize and find a plan for restitution, what needs to be done for that person to shift to this place? Right? They may need to see, hear, or experience my love, my remorse, my kindness. It might be a break. It might be, let's go for a walk so we can move our bodies and shift some energy. It might be coming back to it another day. Like, I don't have the emotional bandwidth for this right now. I need some space, because keep hammering it isn't going to get there. We've been talking about this thing for a freaking hour. We're not getting anywhere. Let's take a break. You know what? Let's get a good night's sleep. Let's start again tomorrow and remember all our tools when we're refreshed. So putting ourselves in a place of what they need to experience. If we're both doing that, chances are we're going to move forward. If one person is doing it and the other isn't, it still works. There's this concept called the window of tolerance, and I could probably include this graph here at one point, but it's this idea that, you know, basically every day we live and operate in this green area, and this green is just like happy and flowing and thinking and being productive and getting things done. We have access to our tools, right? We can think through, oh, I'm supposed to be assuming good intent. When we get upset or hurt or triggered, or, I mean, it can be something as simple as seeing a guy walk by that looks like somebody that, you know, is your ex, and there's pain there, right? And now all of a sudden you feel pain, you might be triggered, and that might be a smaller one, or it might be a bigger one. It might be you crashed my car. It might be I have a stomach ache. Any of these things that take us out of that green, that window of tolerance, a hyper aroused state, an angry state, a hurt, emotional, you know, more and bigger emotions is being in the red. And people are angry, talk about going into the red or seeing red, right? It's a hyper arousal. And then there's also a hypo, where if somebody gives up and quits, they go the silent treatment, they walk away, they don't want to talk, they're just kind of tuning out, they're dismissive, passive aggressive, those kinds of things can get under here. If one person is in the green, you can have a productive conversation, because that one person can hang on if someone else is up here, and they can say, I'm going to assume good intent. I'm going to hold kindness and unconditional love as my value, and I can talk them through it. Wow, I see you're upset. I absolutely made a mistake. I know your language is acknowledging and taking responsibility, so I'm going to do that. I've already called the insurance and filed the claim so that it can get fixed sooner. I'm whatever, right? I can hold that space and be like, I know what you need. I know they can use all those tools. Okay. And help get the other one come back to it just by the contrast. The other person will feel that contrast and they'll want to bring themselves back. The second you get upset and you get triggered and pulled out of it, and you're like, you know what? I've been sitting here being nice to you all night and you're still yelling at me. You need to start assuming good intent and get your butt back in the green, and you're not in the green. Two people now are not in that green space. We're not having a productive conversation. Until at least one person come back into that green, don't even proceed. And I should have put that in there because that's such an important part here. So mental note, I'll add that. So again, understanding what they need in here to shift back into that space. If they're upset, they don't have access to that tool, you do, you're the one that gets to use them, because your goal is to come together to make this move forward, and not I will only use my tools if you do. I will only be in the green if you are, right? That's where that piece comes back in that says, I'm going to do this because I value the relationship and the working together and loving you even if you can't get yourself in the green right now. And then once we get them to come back, right, then we get to share. And again, these tools help get them to the green, assuming good intent, taking responsibility, right? Share your desired outcome. Hey, I'm really wanting to move forward. I know that I did something wrong here. I have put these steps in place to fix it. What's our goal? What's our goal here? Is our goal to get the car fixed, right? And the fourth one, the fourth guideline is clear, direct, and sensitive communication. It is not clear, direct, or sensitive communication. It is clear, direct, and sensitive. And I know we're short on time. I probably will go about 5 minutes over, but I'll do my best to kind of get through this because I know there's a ton here. And. It has to be and. You can have clear communication that isn't sensitive and it won't be effective. You can have clear and direct and it won't be effective. And I have some examples here. It would sure be nice if I had some time to do something I like, is a comment that isn't clear or direct or sensitive. And that puts somebody in a place of trying to guess what you want. Okay, so it sounds like you want more time. What do you want me to do? How do I help? And most of the time people resist. So they're like, okay, that sounds like a guilt trip and I'm not going to participate. And that's, again, the two people going, well, I'm not going to use my tools till you do. So if you want to be responsible for your communication, be clear, direct, and sensitive. And that's like, the next slide covers all of them. I know that you're busy, but would you please help me finish these dishes? If you would bring me the dishes to wash, I'll wash them, you put them away. That'll clear up some space so I can read some of my book before bed. What do you think? It's clear. I directed it at you and it was sensitive to what you have going on and to your feelings. I know I kind of breezed through that one. I want to spend some time on boundaries. So I want to kind of move so I don't run out of time and keep people too much. Okay, so shifting from conflict to closeness. Always assume good intent. Look, that one keeps coming up. Always assume good intent. If we're in a relationship with somebody that doesn't have good intentions, why are we in a relationship with them? I'm in a relationship with them because they're a good person and they have goals and dreams and values and things that I love and enjoy, and they have good intentions. So even if it seems like they don't right now, I know they are a person of good character and good intent, and therefore I can reinterpret how they're acting. Listen for and respond to the element of truth. So someone comes at you and they're like, you always do this every single time. You're on your phone everywhere you go. You might be like, no, I'm not. But there might be an element to it that's true. You know what? I have been on my phone in the car before. Or even, I was on my phone in the car today. You're right. When we respond to the part that's true and not to the part that's not, we shift out of conflict and towards resolution. That's the, I see what you're trying to get at, or there is truth here and I align with you. I'm going to stand next to you and find the truth together instead of I'm going to stand in front of your face and nitpick it until you get it exactly right. And I'm guilty of this one because I'm very much like linguistically like precise. And so when people are like, you always do this thing, I'm like, no, I don't, not always, you know, and it doesn't help. That doesn't help at all. Because I'm like, nope, there was that one time out of 400 that I didn't. So you're wrong and I'm right. And it's a confrontation, right? We're facing off. But if I can stand next to them and say, okay, I know there was a time I did that. Or even, I know there's lots of times I do that. Or I know that often when you're in the car with me, you've seen me do that. Or in the past, I did that a lot. You're right. I'm not lying. I'm not betraying myself. Those are true statements, but they agree with the part of theirs that's true. Okay, empathy. again, that's the whole, like, I know that this person has something going on inside of them. So when they're upset, instead of like, nope, that's not true, you need to quit, being angry, I can be like, look, I know you're really upset here. I can see it. And that sucks. Like, I get how angry and hurt you are. How can we come back together on this? And that connection then is somebody feeling heard and understood and feeling okay and safe will bring you back from conflict back into closeness. And boundaries. Boundaries can be tricky, and I want to take a minute to explain these. But boundaries can go either way. So I want to be careful. Boundaries are their own muscle, their own class to talk about, that they can go the way of helping shift out of conflict, and they can make the conflict worse depending on how and when you do it. So you have to be really careful about assuming good intent, having empathy, owning your own statements, your own things. This is what I need, this is what I'm looking for, here's my goals when we do boundaries. Because if they're not done in a way that's actually genuine and the other person can interpret that, they'll interpret it to be controlling, ultimatums, this kind of thing, and it's usually will set people farther off. So we have to be really careful with boundaries. Sometimes the situation may escalate itself enough that you have to be super firm, and you just have to be like, here's my boundary, and I'm not negotiating it. And that's something that we have to learn to gauge. And if the energy of the conflict is higher, you probably have to be more firm in your boundaries. I'm going to talk about boundaries. Okay, boundaries are I statements. What do I need to see, hear, experience? Again, that know thyself. I crashed your car, you're coming at me, you're screaming. I've been sitting here for an hour trying to assume good intent, trying to get the conversation back to a productive space, trying to validate your feelings. You're still flaming mad, you're yelling at me, you're calling me names. And I'm like, I'm exhausted, and I can feel myself slipping out of that green, right? That I'm going to start going, you know what, you son of a gun, I don't appreciate you talking to me like this. And I don't want that to happen. So I may have a boundary, right? What do I need to see, hear, and experience? Okay, I need to see your body language shift. I need to hear your tone change. I need to experience a team effort here. I need to experience myself as being calm, and I'm noticing that I'm not able to do that because of it. I notice I'm not able to stay present with you in this conversation because of this behavior. That's the difference, right? So a boundary shifts from I need you to do this to here's what I need for me. And then what are you prepared to do to accomplish that? A simple boundary formula is I need blank, and therefore I will blank. Again, your personal needs and responsibilities. I need to be kind and calm in our conversations and in our conflicts. I'm approaching the point where I'm not feeling that way, and I need to walk away. I need to take a break. I will check in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. That's my statement of my needs and my responsibility, what I'm willing to do to protect it. If I'm like, you need to calm down right now, that's not a boundary. A big one that played out for me in life, one of the first lessons I'd really learned how to shift that was when my husband was drinking heavily. And I felt like I'd tried everything to get him to quit drinking, right? And that's the first problem, is that I was trying to get him to do something that he clearly didn't want to do or didn't know how to do. And by me yelling at him or giving him guilt trips or being disgusted or distancing myself from him, all those things trying to get a behavior out of him, those are not boundaries. Those are manipulations or ultimatums, threats, these kinds of things, right? I'm going to leave you if you don't stop drinking, if you don't blah, 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 ultimatum. Well, I don't listen to ultimatums. Okay, so then we end up in a power struggle, right? When I learned to shift my language to this bottom piece, you know what? I need a relationship where we're working together. We're building together. We're creating our dreams and our goals, and we're present with each other. And we have this synergistic approach to our life together as a family. That's what I need in a relationship. And we don't have it right now. I don't have that. I'm not experiencing that. And I need to so strongly. I'm going to leave if I don't have that. It's, for one, it's really hard to argue with. It's really hard for somebody to say, yeah, you do. You feel that way. Right? It's hard for them to say, you don't want that. That's ridiculous. You don't want that. Right? When I'm over here like, you need to quit drinking, they can argue all day. No, I don't. I'm fine. I go to work fine. Whatever, fine. When I say, I don't have the relationship I need, and I'm willing to leave if I don't have it, they go, oh, well, that sucks. I don't want that. What do we need to do differently? And that opens up the door, right? I don't know if it's your drinking, because I don't know you and all the things that are going on. If that's what's affecting you being present here or not, that's up to you. But this is what I need. Can we do that? Can we find a way? And that shift from, maybe I should stop drinking because I don't want the consequence of that. But with the caveat that you absolutely have to be willing to follow through. And this comes back to those non-negotiables or the deal breakers versus the preference, right? I prefer that you quit drinking. Like, it's inconvenient, it's costing us money. If I'm not willing to walk away, I need to communicate that as a preference. I prefer this to shift. I want this type of relationship, and I prefer it to shift. And if we don't have it, then I'm going to spend time with my friends instead. If it's a non-negotiable and it's something that is absolutely a deal breaker, and you're like, this is something I will not tolerate in my relationship, you have to be willing to walk away. And if you're going to tell somebody that you're willing to end the relationship over it, you have to be willing to end the relationship. This is where threats get confusing, because you're like, well, I'll leave. But maybe you don't actually want to leave. You want them to be afraid of you leaving and shift the behavior. But if you're not actually willing to leave, it's a threat, and it's a way to manipulate their behaviors because you want them to feel fear, to shift their behaviors to do the thing that you want. It's a lot more productive and healthy all around, that clear, direct, and sensitive thing, right? To say, I need this, I'm not feeling this, I will do this. That allows them to be in choice and not in fear. I want somebody to be with me because they choose to be, and they're working, not because they're afraid of me or afraid of a consequence. That's an energy I don't want. Boundaries are tricky. I think that's my last. Yes, let's say we're probably gonna have a bunch of questions, so start thinking of them and typing them up so I don't have to keep you too long, because we're already 10 minutes over. Having a healthy relationship is like having a healthy body. You have to exercise the muscles continuously to stay strong. So look for these patterns on a smaller scale. Look for them in your friendships, your coworkers, the way that you talk to neighbors or whatever, and start seeing, even watching TV, you can see a lot of these patterns and be like, oh, they're not assuming good intent there. Like, it's really hard for me to watch sitcoms and even just a lot of movies, because they like rom-coms, they have these horrible communication patterns, and they try to do these, games, and everyone says they want to be free of games. This is how to do it. So start looking and watching and do them small, build the muscle, strengthen it. And then when it comes to something big, you've got some of those tools ready. Doo-doo-doo. That was a lot. I do that.
It
Okay.
was a lot. That's really good info, though.
some of these, it's hard to get to like the good, useful stuff without the stuff underneath. So it takes a minute.
Yeah.
Can you please do a workshop on boundaries? Yes, I could do an entire 48-hour workshop just on boundaries. There's obviously a lot to it, but again, with all those fundamental pieces, you know, if we can go back and remember to assume good intent, right? To know yourself, to speak from your own experience, to stay in the green, those things we can keep.
And then somebody,
baseline.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Somebody asked if we can make the slides available.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if you want to send those to me, I can email them out to everybody who signed up for the class. Okay, so we'll give, are there any other questions? You know, one of the real turning points, I'm 30 years married this year, but one of the real turning points in our relationship was with my husband was our first year of marriage. We both came from families and parents who fought a lot. And so we were following in that pattern. And one time we were fighting or making up probably, and my husband said to me, "We're on the same team, you and me. We're on the same team." And, you know, he was trying to say, I have good intent. And, you know, and that's how I took it. And so when we'd fight after that, I'd be like, okay, if we're on the same team, what is it he's trying to say? And so, yeah, that really helped in our communication for, you know, the last 30 years. So it's, you know, a lot of that rings true to me. When that kept coming up, I kept thinking, yep, I can validate that. So.
And definitely it's that idea of it's you and me against the problem. Right? Not you against me.
And it certainly wasn't smooth sailing, but it's, you know, it really helped a lot. There's no doubt. Well, I am not seeing any other questions. You covered so much. I'm sure there's a lot for everybody to process. I will get these slides out to you, hopefully tonight.
Yep, I'll save them to a PDF.
Right away, great. Then I'll get them out. Thank you everyone for being here, and watch, like I said, watch for some, I think we're gonna do fewer classes, but I do think we will offer a few in July. Summer's just tough. So we'll scale back and see about what we can offer. So watch for that info. We'd love to have you join us. Thank you for being here, and thank you to Nicole. Really, really good information.
Yep. If anyone has questions, let me know.
Yeah. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.